Hey, what's going on, fam? Welcome to the Creative Comeback Podcast. I am a lot of things in life. I am a husband, I am a father, I am a photographer, I'm a creative, and I am a filmmaker, and I also dabble in YouTube. I am super pumped that you are here listening to this podcast today, and I want to go ahead and tell you that I am obsessed with failure and how creatives overcome failure to find success on the other side of it. Now, if you're here listening today, I want to encourage you to join my Facebook group called The Creative Comeback as well. And there you will find more creatives sharing and exploring failure, creativity, and finding some level of success. This is what this podcast is all about. We are going to talk about a lot of different things in this podcast, but we are going to talk with so many different creatives from all across the world, sharing their life experiences, sharing where they fail, sharing what success means, and sharing what life is on the other side of creativity. I'm pumped that you're here today. We are going to get started with this episode right now. All right, guys. So I want to go ahead and start off like, hey guys, I know some of you who are in this room may know my guest, but I want to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Tim Riddick. I'm a full-time creative based out of the Washington, D.C. area. I've been a full-time wedding photographer for the last 11 years. Over the last 4 years, I've been working on this massive personal project called The 50, which is a photographic survey of interracial relationships based on the 50th anniversary of the Supreme Court ruling, Loving v. Virginia. I also have a small Facebook group called The Comeback Season, and I run a small podcasting company called The Morning Tea Podcast. And right now, we have 4 different podcasts that we're currently running. But enough about me. Raquita, I mean, I can introduce you, but I want you to do it yourself. I want you to tell the crowd who you are.
That's an interesting question. Right now, today, I'm a photographer. I'm a creative. I am a mom. I'm a wife. But most importantly, as of late, I'm just a woman. I'm a Black woman trying to figure out what exactly that means to me at this particular point.
So what do you mean, like you're trying to figure out what that means to you?
I feel like there are a lot of expectations on people in general in the world. I mean, that's what society is. That's what community is. It's a group of people choosing to live and commune together. And that always comes with expectations. And so I'm trying to figure out who I am outside of the expectations that the world has on me. You know, as a wife, as a mother, as a business owner, who am I without all of these expectations that have been kind of thrust upon my life just by existing? So, like, that is my big thing in this year. Just trying to become more comfortable and more at peace with who I am outside of all of the noise around me.
That's really interesting, because I would think after knowing you for a couple of years, we actually initially connected in a total random group that we were both in called I think it was called Woke Wedding Professionals, and that's where you and I kind of first connected and really kind of kicked it off. And I've learned just so much from you. So it's really interesting for me to hear that you are still learning about yourself. Not that I guess we should always be learning, but like in the terms like what over the last few, let's just use 2020, since 2020 was just such a trying year for a lot of us who are in the creative field. What are some of the things that you learned about yourself in 2020?
That I'm not a superwoman. I'm not all seeing and all knowing. Like, so as a Black woman, I feel like the life that I have been sort of presented with and expected to live really subscribes to a lot of stereotypes that women, and Black women in particular, are expected to embody.
Yeah.
Like, I'm supposed to be the caregiver. I'm supposed to be my family's matriarch. I'm supposed to be all these different things. I'm supposed to take care of people, and I'm supposed to make things better. And those are all roles that I have embraced and enjoyed to some extent, but they are heavy and they weigh. And being able to sort of dismantle this expectation that has been offered to me and being able to rebuild those roles, the ones that I want to keep anyway, into what I want to be. Like, I don't mind being the matriarch of my family, but I don't believe that that requires the sacrifice of being here, like where I live. I feel like I can be the matriarch of my family without necessarily having to commit my entire life to this metropolitan area in which I live.
Huh.
So,
Yeah.
like little things like that. Well, whether or not they are little, but things like that, like my family's expectations about who I am as a woman, as a person, as a daughter, as a granddaughter, as a sister, and how I want them to perceive and accept me. Like, I parent completely different than my parents and my grandparents, and even my cousins, for that matter. And having to place those boundaries and make that decision that this is the way it's going to be, and having to sort of mold them into accepting that this is how it is. Like, that this is, that's not an instantaneous switch flip.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know about your family, but mine is full of hard brains. And like, in a movie once, somebody said, it was a dogma, and he said, stop thinking so much about what you believe and go with what you know.
Correct.
And my family is full of like big beliefs and what they believe. And what I know, though, is that a lot of those beliefs are based in problematic, like, dogma, and trying to unbase what we know out of what we believe and then try to move forward in that has been a big challenge for me, especially as like the things that I do hold dear. Like, a lot of people don't really know that I am really a woman of faith, but I don't really subscribe to it in the way that my friends and family have long subscribed to faith. Like, I am a huge proponent of a higher power. I do not believe that everything just magically. I believe in science. I absolutely 1000% believe in science, but I don't believe science and faith are necessarily two separate things that cannot coexist. Like, I just don't. I honestly believe that science is a way that we can explain the things that we believe in. And just because you haven't figured out the science for the thing doesn't necessarily mean it didn't happen.
That is true. And I do think that is I think we've had this discussion before. Maybe it was at the Cookout photography conference where I was kind of talking about, or maybe we were talking about something, and I was like, I feel like so many people have tried to become either or people. Like, it's either this or it's that. But really, in reality, we should be both and people. It can be both things at the same time. Two things can equally be true. And, but I think one of the things that we do is we kind of just toss out a belief set, because clearly we have just become either or. It's either this or that. And I feel that one of the things that you just said that really resonated with me is, and I even kind of feel it somewhat with myself as a father and a husband and, and things like that, is that I have to choose that I can only do one thing, that there are a certain set of expectations based upon me, pretty much based on somebody else's preconceived notions of what I should be or who I should be or how I should create. And I feel that it's really kind of refreshing to hear, because I do think that we get really caught up or really trapped into systems that are really kind of meant to kind of hold us down, right? Like, so
absolutely.
So I'm really really curious about this because you've talked about it a little bit here, but like, what are some of the things that you kind of like you're struggling with right now? Like Raquita in 2021, what are some of the things that you're kind of struggling with and kind of processing and trying to like really kind of dig through?
I'm always struggling and processing through imposter syndrome. I know that I'm talented, and I know that I have worked hard to develop my talent into a skill. But I don't personally feel like my skill is where I want it to be. And as I am growing and trying to become the artist that I want to be, it's a challenge because as a business owner, there isn't a whole lot of time for art. And once you toss all the other hats into the ring, there's just not a lot of time for art anymore. And some days I feel stagnant, like I'm doing the same thing over and over again. And I don't want to be doing the same thing over and over again. As much as I love my job, I don't want to be making the same images for 20 different couples every week. I want to really get into the practice of creating out of who people are and not putting them into my art installation. So that's a big thing for me this year. Being more self-focused as a human, leaning harder into my commitment to empathy as a lifestyle is a big thing for me this year. And I'm trying to listen more, which is ironic on a space where I'm invited to talk. I am really working on hearing people where they are, whether that is as a photographer, as a wife, as a mother, particularly as a mother. I'm working on listening to my children where they are. The people around me, the people who I disagree with vehemently, I'm trying to get better at listening to people where they are and trying to find common space for us. Those are big things for me this year.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of call myself out on this one because something that you said is something that I really have kind of been really trying to just do myself. I think so often as I'm just going to call myself out, just often as a man, like I feel like sometimes I listen to fix. I don't listen to hear.
Yes, I have that problem too.
Yeah, so it's like sometimes, like with my wife, she will come to me with a set of, I shouldn't say it's not a set of problems. She will come with me with just wanting to talk, and sometimes I spend way more time listening to be like, okay, I can fix this for you. Just do this, without actually hearing with where she's coming from, or sometimes without. She doesn't necessarily want me to fix it. She just wants me to listen to her. And listen to hear her. And I feel that what ends up happening way more often than not was causing our relationship to be somewhat stagnant.
Yes.
Right. So I think one of the things that has really, really kind of helped me in 2020 is really like one of two things. One is like loving my wife is with exactly where she's at. I know there are some things that like I would want to tweak or change, or however. I think we are always that way sometimes with our spouses, is that we want them to be what we hoped for them to be, versus being like, okay, you know what, I can't do that for you right now, but what I am going to do is I'm going to make the commitment to love you right where you're at. And not only am I going to make that commitment, I'm also going to make the commitment to not have the need or the want to fix whatever is wrong. I shouldn't say whatever is wrong, but like when she comes with me with a something that she wants to talk about, is to sit there and actually listen and then just sit in it.
Yeah.
And then there's times so she's like, "Are you listening to me?" I was like, "No, I'm listening. I'm just not going to interrupt you."
Right.
You know, and I think that is it's been extremely helpful for me in my relationship. You know, I've been married going on 12 years, and
Congratulations.
Ah, thanks. So
That's a milestone.
it is. Being married and staying married is probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life.
Amen.
But I can say this, man. I can say that I'm in a much better place when I came to a realization that I need to love my spouse with where she's at versus it being where I want her to be at. And has done wonders for both of us. Like, we're in a really, really good space and have been really throughout the pandemic, which is kind of crazy to kind of think. Cause there used to be the point in time, and I'm sure you probably experienced this a little bit as well, where we would, I would be gone a lot. And then when I would come home, all of a sudden I'm interrupting the flow of things.
Yes. So my husband travels for work, and he's gone. He was gone before the pandemic, at least a week out of a month every month. And when he would come home, the kids and I would just be finding our groove. Yeah. Like, from him being gone, and then he would come back and it would disrupt things for a couple days, and then we would go back into as close to our you left groove as possible. But it's always evolving. And I think for me, trying to help him understand that is always evolving kind of helped him not feel like he was displacing us when he came back.
Yes.
Like that was a big thing for us as a family, because he would be like, the kids would be like, well, this is how mom would have us doing it while you were gone. And he would be like, well, I feel like when I come back in, things are different when I come back. And they have to be different while you're gone because you're not here. Like, I am a very lucky woman in that my husband is very much a partner in our life. I refer to him as my partner more often than I do as my spouse. Sure. Because it's literally the relationship that we have built. So when he's not there and I have to redelegate the things redelegate myself to cover the things that he so effortlessly takes care of in our life, the kids and I are always like, okay, so how are we going to move into this? And we've kind of got a rhythm down when he's gone, but getting him to be okay with that rhythm when he came back was a very interesting journey.
It's interesting. So, I mean, you are a woman who wears a lot of hats. You kind of discussed that already. Even when you described yourself, you didn't really describe yourself. Well, you said you were a photographer, but you wear a lot of hats. So how do you continue to learn in your craft in order to stay on top of things within all of the roles that you have?
It has been so it was not something, so that's an interesting question. So from the beginning, it's important for me to point out, I started shooting weddings a very long time ago. I shot my first wedding when I was 14 is when I shot my first wedding, and I am 44. Mm-hmm. Wow. This
You've been in the industry a long time.
I've been shooting weddings for a long time. And nobody taught me anything about shooting weddings. My family was like, we need a photographer to shoot these weddings. We bought you this expensive camera, shoot these weddings. It was just that simple. They were like, I was like, how do you do it? They was like, we don't know. You do it and you tell us. Literally, that's how it went down for my family. And so I shot weddings 5 or 6 a year from the time I was 14 until I got engaged for the first time. I was engaged 2.5 times. I'll tell that story another day. But I shot weddings from the time I was 14 till I was 22. And so when I met my now husband and we were building our life together, one of the things that he saw in me was that the time that I was very happy was when I was creating as a wedding photographer. He was like, this is the thing you should do. And I was like, nobody's going to pay me for that. Yeah. And so we had this whole process of me learning that it is something that people pay for and that it is something you can do for a living, and kind of building that out. But even in building that out, nobody was like, hey, it's something photography is something that you learn outside of the classes that I took at high school. Mm-hmm. So photography was just something that I kind of trial and errored with my way through. These are the things I need to know. how do I make this, like, you go into a situation, it does not work. You're like, okay, how do I make this thing better? Like, this is before the internet. So I'm like booking my way through it. Like, so like I didn't have mentors. And by the time I like was like, there are other photographers in the world who do this, let me try to find people. We were not in that whole community over competition thing.
Oh,
Folks
yeah.
was like, are you kidding? Get away from me. Like, so, like, so it didn't occur to me that I should be actively working on my craft as on my talent to turn it into a skill. I'm going to say until what, 2013?
Yeah.
Like,
That's yeah. So I think I started shooting weddings in 2011. I shot my first one in 2008. But I always tell people there was no YouTube as we see it today.
Right.
YouTube
is a direct result of Janet Jackson's boob.
That is
like, no, real talk.
No,
like,
I know it is.
Like, no, the guys, they were like, we want to be able to watch that video over, and they built YouTube so they could see Janet Jackson's boob. Like, that's a real story.
Dude, that's wild.
So this idea that that I could learn outside of because I tried to go back to school to get a photography degree because that's how you learn. That's what I was under the understanding that education was, that you went to school for it. So I went back to school, but they wouldn't let me test out of basics.
Yeah.
Of course I know I've been shooting weddings for how long? I can I can shoot around your camera 101 teacher. I don't need him for this.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't let me out of those intro classes. So I quit, and that's when I started my business. And that was in 2008. Wow. Literally that's how it started for me. I was like, if the guy who they're paying $40,000 a year to teach me how to take a picture, if I can shoot circles around him, then I'm ready to make his $40,000 a year. That was literally the logic that we used to make that decision.
Wow, that's crazy. So in all of our discussions that we've had all you and I spoke at multiple conferences together. I never knew that. I never knew that's how you got started.
Yeah, it's because I've been in it for so long, I forget that to tell people the point in which I started teaching other photographers, the things that I was teaching them were ironically the things that have been embedded in my business since the very beginning. When I opened my first studio, it was with the intent to sell wall art and products. I have always had wall art and albums in my studio. That is not a new thing for me. That's not something that I got bit by the bug. No, my oldest album sample is from 2010.
Oh, wow. I think that is the one thing. I think, I can't remember if it was Hustle and Heels or if it was the cookout where you gave your talk about selling wedding albums out of the trunk of your car. And I think one of the things that a lot of photographers, when they're trying to diversify their income or however that looks, they've never even thought about selling wedding albums. And that's something that's been in your business for a long time. So it's always kind of weird to me, when I think of people who have been doing this for a while and aren't, I know you're teaching about it now, and I know that I've heard, people rant and rave about after they've walked out of your class and be like, well, how come I haven't been doing this all this time? I've been shooting weddings for 3, 4, 5 years and I've never sold a wedding album.
But that's a generational thing, though. You have to remember when my business started to change is when digital photography started to change the world. The digital photography changed the world.
Yeah.
Digital cameras and digital access literally changed the world. Everything about think about my grandma died when she was 103.
Holy cow. That's
last year she died at 103, my great grandma. Think about the world as it existed just in photography from when she was born to when she died. The idea that I could take my photos, put them on a 3.5 inch by 5 inch, 1/4 inch thick brick, take them to her house, sit down and like scroll through thousands of photos for her to view, let alone print them and look at. It's like amazing. This is the woman who didn't have a taco till she was 84.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, like photos, like she never even looked at cameras when you took her picture, because she was just so used to being trained when she was little that they don't want you to look at the camera, because if you blink while you're looking at a slow exposure, it blurs your face. So old people don't look at cameras because that's not how they took pictures in their 20s.
Yeah, so that's really wild that you are even bringing this up, because I was going through some old photographs of my father-in-law's and no one's smiling.
Yes, because you couldn't smile, because you can't hold a smile for that long without moving.
Correct. And if the one person who tried to smile, they would be all blurry, or would be
would be blurry.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it wasn't something that you could just do over.
Yeah, because it was expensive then. It was a luxury.
It's expensive.
Yeah, it was a luxury to have your photograph taken.
Absolutely.
And dude, I can talk about this until I'm blue in the face.
Exactly.
About how poorly we treat the actual art of photography.
Exactly. But we are of the age bracket that we remember our parents taking us to Olin Mills or whatever random hole in the wall place to get their photos, get your photos done, right?
Correct.
And that you had to get all dressed up, and it was a big thing, and your parents paid an obscene amount of money to them to get a 16 by 20 or 11 by 14 or whatever it was framed and mounted for your house.
Correct. Yeah.
Like we went in my whole childhood, I can remember going like 3 times.
Wow.
To have our family photo taken as a group to a studio, which was usually Olin Mills.
Yeah.
To do that.
Yeah, I think Olin Mills is where I got my senior portraits taken. Was at Olin Mills. So like when I go back and I look at it and I'm looking at like these seniors today, I was like, man, you guys don't know how good you had it. Like how good you have it right now, because like my senior portraits, dude, they looked awful. I mean, looking back at it now, just because of the style, there was no personality. It was like, here I am in my cap and gown. Here I am in maybe 2 or 3 outfits. And my parents paid a ton of money for it. And then they had to go pay a ton of money to have them printed and stuff like that. And I feel, gosh, this is just really kind of like one of those things that's like really making me scratch my head about how poorly we actually treat the art of photography. To be honest with you, it's borderline disrespectful when we're just going to give you a ton of digital images on a flash drive.
But you have to think about who they are as a generation. Let's think about who these young people are as a generation. Like literally our generation has grown into people who are literally everything is instant access. They don't wait for anything.
No.
Like the act of waiting is something that not even just new generations, our generation as well, has become so addicted to the speed. We can't even, like, to this day, it amuses me when my husband says that our internet is moving slow. I'm like, bruh, do you not remember AOL dial-up? Like,
we forget. We definitely forget. Or if someone
forget.
Yeah, someone picks up the phone and then all of a sudden you get kicked off the internet.
Exactly. Your mom picks up the phone and your homework is Ghost. Like, like you don't remember that? Like, so this whole premise that the world is supposed to move fast is just what they have become used to. And we as quote unquote elders have got to remind them of the dangers of speed. Like, just like we instituted speed limits and seat belts and so forth, we need to do the same thing for data. Like, and that's all digital imagery is until you print it. It's just data.
Yeah. So
if you're not going to tell the people, hey, you want all the information, because that's all that they're after. Like, it's literally just a plug-in of information. If you want all the information and you want to safeguard it, there are some ways to do that. And one of the primary ways to safeguard your memories is to print them.
Yeah.
Like, And they go, oh, I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Like, how many, like, literally all I have to do is ask them, how many phones have you had this year? And how many times in the last 2 to 3 years have you busted a phone and you hadn't backed it up? So you lost maybe a couple months of photos and memories.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so very true. That is the one thing that my wife, who is kind of, I would say my wife is pretty low tech. Whenever we upgrade her phone, she's like, well, are all my images going to transfer over?
Exactly.
And I'm like, yes, Care, they're going to transfer over. But it is kind of like one of those things that, like, you know, there are stories, we've heard of stories of people whose houses have caught fire and they've ran back in to grab a photo album or some of that stuff because that was the only memories that they would have of a relative or something like that. And I feel like we have gotten to the point to where, and I think even as photographers, and I hate this kind of talk. I love to know what's in people's bags and what they use to create, but I hate the gear talk of like, oh man, this camera can take 30 frames per second. I'm like, what am I going to do with 30 frames a second?
That's a crutch to me.
It is.
Sure, you can take 30 frames a second, but why are you gonna? Yeah,
or why do you need to? Like,
right.
what, like, and I think of like all the greats before us. And, you know, this is like one of those things that I'm kind of currently going through, you know, for just Black History Month. I'm kind of going through all of these photographers that people may not know that are African-American photographers. And dude, I am learning so much. I'm reading at least 6 to 7 articles per photographer and kind of getting a really good baseline. So that way I can, when I write about it online, that like I at least have a base understanding of who this person was and why they created and the obstacles that they had to overcome to even be able to create. And I think that so often we've lost that. We've lost the history of what we do. Or the people that had struggled before us. And I think that when you really get to know, when we really get to know who is creating what and how they created it, and realize that the tech was so low. It was so low tech back then, and they created wonderful images. And here we are talking about like, this isn't me picking on Sony, but I need that new Sony A1 because it's the best of all worlds.
When people tell me that, I ask them if they had the latest, if they had the flagship Canon or if they had the flagship Nikon when they were shooting non-mirrorless. Mm-hmm. And if you didn't, you don't need it.
Correct. Like
flat out. You want it. Ain't nothing wrong with wanting it, but you don't need it.
Yeah, I do.
And I think that that's a thing that, as creatives and tech heads, which I kind of think photographers can be a lot of times, we have a very, very bad habit of equating our needs to our wants because they're not the same.
Yeah, I guess maybe I never really fell into that trap because my dad would always get us what our needs were. He never got us what our wants. And he used to make it very clear, about that.
We have very different dads. My father was very much and I think that's a direct result of his childhood. My father was very much about, what do you want to do? What do you want to see? What do you want to try? The reason why I have a camera is because I said once offhanded, man, I think I want a camera. And my dad was like, bet. And I thought he was going to buy a Polaroid, and he bought me a Pentax K1000. Literally, that's how my dad's brain worked. He was like, you want to try a thing? Let's throw everything at it and see what sticks.
Yeah. I think my dad was like that when it came to athletics for me when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But when it came, I always tell people this as part of like most of my talks when I go to photography conference that I came from a Cosby family before Cosby got creepy. But it's like, my dad was a doctor and my mom was a social worker, and my parents, when I told my dad, I was like, oh, I want to go to art school. That's what I wanted to do. And
I had the Theo talk, did you?
Oh yeah. My dad was like over my dead body.
See,
so it was,
thing was my family never, that's all they ever wanted me to be.
Yeah.
Like once I got into my camera, that's all they ever wanted me to do.
Yeah. I had to go the long way around to get to where I'm at today.
I did too. I didn't listen to them, but I mean,
well,
I was a kid. Who's listening to their parents?
Yeah, my dad was like, no, you're not going to art school. You're going to go to university. We are doctors, lawyers. You know, we have a certain aesthetics that Riddicks uphold to, kind of thing. And that was always kind of my dad's bag. And I think in one essence is that I don't think my dad, okay, I'm going to say this out of the side of my mouth. My dad wanted me to struggle, but he also didn't want me to struggle.
Oh, yeah, of course.
You know, so
I think that's kind of par for the course for parenthood, at least parenthood through the 90s, I want to say.
Yeah.
Like my parents, parents always want you to succeed, but they want you to learn the lessons in the process.
Correct.
The lessons they want to teach you, but don't think you're going to listen to, like that. And my mom hates that I don't want my children. Like, I just want you to listen to me and learn the lesson the easy way, and then go out into the world and do better than I did. Like, I want you to start from my shoulders and do better. Yeah. And like, that's what I want for my kids. Like, my daughter is, both of them, ironically, and it was unexpected to me that my middle daughter is a fantastic artist. Mm-hmm. And I didn't see that coming, but I also strongly encouraged them to try anything. Like when my oldest daughter we knew was an artist, like from when she was little. She was always drawing and doing all this stuff. But my middle is a reader. And so, you know, people hear reader and they automatically think book smart and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay. But when her sister asked for art supplies, she would ask for them too. And we automatically were like, if you would like to do it, we'll get you some too. But we never considered that she would be a quote unquote artist. Yeah. And I honestly think that the freedom from our expectation has allowed her to do more, be more free, try more things. Because everybody always expected her to be like, well, I might be an accountant. Like we used to say, Cammy's going to be Beyonce and Gabby's going to be the lawyer that gets her out of trouble. But there is quite actually the very real chance that Gabby will be some artistic Beyonce and do great, grand things in her art if she so desires to do so. But it was never something that we were like, you should be an artist and blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? Yeah, I think it's one of those things when you force something onto kids, or you force an ideal or something that you think that sometimes they revolt against it. I think that is kind of like when we talk about parenting and being creatives and photographers and stuff like that. And and maybe it's just also from my personal life experience when I talk to when my wife and I have the college talk, because obviously, we are starting to think about like, are we going to put money, like we're putting money away, but we had our third kid, but we haven't started putting money away for him yet. And we're kind of like talking about that. And we were having this like real honest discussion. And I was like, as a parent, with 4 degrees, and I was like, I don't know if I want to put that expectation on them. If Noah, my oldest, decides that he wants to be a chef, I want him to pursue that. And if it doesn't work out, he has time to go do something else. Absolutely. We are literally having that conversation now as my daughter is 16 and a high school junior. And our only requirement for college is that if you don't have a plan, then that's the next step. If you got a plan and an idea of what you want to do otherwise, we're all for it. And we will help you and support you in whatever that is. But if you don't have a plan, then we're going to keep going to school until you find a plan, until you figure it out, until you try the thing that you want to try or do the thing that you want to do. But and if she wants to take a gap year, we're all for that too. Like, you want to take a gap year and go backpacking across a non-COVID Europe, I'm all for that. And I always have to, it does kind of feel like it's weird. Like when we're, in these conversations that obviously I was, having this discussion earlier, is like, I just don't think that we would be on this app right now if 2020 hadn't happened. Oh God, no. Nobody would be sitting around wanting to talk on the phone. Like, no, that's exactly what this is. This is pretty much it. I was telling, my wife was asking me this the other day, because I was, I have a shared calendar, and she was like, oh,
who's Raquita and what are you like, why are you doing this on Clubhouse? And I was trying to, now my wife hadn't really heard of Clubhouse. That's just not really her world. Like I said, my wife is kind of low tech, and I was kind of explaining to her what Clubhouse was. I was like, it's part like having a telephone conversation, it's part podcast, and it's part Dear Abby. But I also think it's also like having a phone call with a bunch of people listening in onto your phone call.
I tell people it's really very 1987. It's really just a like the unlimited use of three-way calling. Like it's a party line. Like literally somebody got $1 billion stock accusation out of a party line.
Yeah.
And that is amazing.
That is amazing. And it is kind of like what's old is new again kind of thing. And it's like, I try not to spend too much time on this app. But for like, I think when I first got on for like 30 days, I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do with this app. Like I didn't quite understand it. I understood it in the concepts, but then it was like maybe about 25 days ago where I really kind of started to like dig into this app. And I was like, oh my gosh, I get to hang out with all of my friends online and I get to talk to them, and I feel like so much is like lost in the written words sometimes. Yes. Like on Facebook or on Instagram, like we share these pictures and captions and you get into discussions, and I was telling this to my wife, I was like, the difference between Clubhouse as a social media platform is I get to hear the tone of the other person's voice. Absolutely.
I literally have conversations on Facebook all the time, and I know that people are reading them as angry and big and like like big blown up, and I'm always like, bruh, like I'm using these funny gifs so that you don't hear me like I'm yelling. I'm not yelling at you.
Well, I'm just
talking to you.
I think that's the thing, right? It's other people's preconceived notions of who we are without ever actually getting to know us.
Absolutely.
There are so many.
I have that so bad.
Yeah, I think there's so many times like, where we're having like these conversations online 9 times out of 10, and they're just words. I was actually just having a separate conversation with someone else about 20 minutes ago, and he was kind of confused is the best way that I could describe it. He was saying, we were talking about Black Lives Matter and the organization versus the connotation of what Black Lives actually means. And then he wanted to he said, well, what about my point of view? I was like, well, so he's a white male. And I said, let's put a little stop in this real quick. Sometimes in some conversations, you have to kind of read the room and know that not every viewpoint is necessarily welcomed. Exactly. And it doesn't necessarily mean that your viewpoint is wrong or that someone shouldn't have the time to kind of explain it to you. But sometimes you just have to read the room. And there are times, even when I'm getting into conversations that I'm not fully aware of, that online, and this is kind of where I think Clubhouse is great, is that I can then listen to the tone of people's voice. I can understand, well, maybe this is a space where I can ask a question that I'm not 100% sure on, because you can tell that from my voice. That I may be unsure, versus it like sometimes I can write something and the conversation could be heated. So by the time someone reads my comment, they could totally read the intention incorrectly.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's just a total random. So I do want to ask you this question.
Sure.
And this is like what is going on like in your personal life that influences you to create? Well, like I know there's a lot of things, you wear a lot of hats, but is there something out there that like is like influencing you to just become a better creator, a better photographer?
I am doing a bit of a dive into art history, and kind of refreshing myself about composition and lines and movement. I have found that I get better lessons about that in looking at art as paintings and art as that sort of medium pencil, charcoal, acrylics, oils, and watching how art has evolved over time. and being able to kind of grasp onto art as a common connector between my medium, which is currently photography, and the mediums like art concepts in other mediums. So for me, I spend a fair amount of time at my local art museum. I spend more so lately than I had in 2020. That was how I started the year, that was something that I was going to be more into. And then, of course, COVID. And so I didn't get to go as much. But you'd be surprised how much stuff in the course of COVID, I've seen art exhibits all over the world because they are streaming things online, and there are like big pushes for people to be exposed to things that I never would have seen otherwise. Like, I want to say I saw, what's it, the Louvre? They did like an online thing for a while.
Oh, yeah, I did see that.
Yeah, so like there are lots of different opportunities for me to grasp onto and embrace art on a lot of different levels, and then be able to translate that into the way that I see and express myself with my couples. I am still trying to find a personal project that I want to get behind, that I want to invest my time into. My intention initially was to do more street photography in St. Louis, but COVID.
Yeah.
And so I haven't had the chance to kind of embrace this whole walk around with your camera and just see what happens, because like that was how I learned in the beginning. And I was like, well, let's go back to square one. Like when I took my camera everywhere and did everything. And there was like a 5-year period, which I hate, that happened in the middle of my children's childhood, where I did not want to be attached to my camera. I wanted to be present for them. And so now there are more random cameras, more smaller digital cameras randomly throughout my house for me to capture moments with them now, so that I'm still documenting who they are and documenting their life a little more, especially since I am not documenting other people's lives.
Yeah, it's really kind of amazing how 2020 kind of put some things back into perspective,
Absolutely.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of one of the things. I have a bunch of like just random cameras, very much like you, just stashed around the house on tabletops, on banners, on ledges or whatever, that I can just kind of pick up and photograph my kids with. And I think that is something that I've always have kind of been pretty good at. And I think that is, but it had kind of went into overdrive more. And I've shared this at kind of like in the very beginning in May of last year, in a Facebook group that you and I are both moderators of. It's like I understand that we're in a pandemic and there's a lot of just bad stuff going on in the world. But I was like, I just want to encourage you to pick up your camera and create. You know, it's like you've got things around you that are beautiful and that need to be documented. And don't let the only time that you pick up your camera being be for your clients. Be for your clients. You're documenting other people more than you're documenting your own family. And it's like, and I'm also very keen. I spent the entire 2019 of not taking one single photograph with my cell phone. I was like, I wanted to pick up a camera. If I wanted to get better in my craft, that means I was going to have to practice. Yeah. I was going to have to shoot things when the lighting wasn't perfect. I was going to have to photograph things when my kids didn't want me to. Because there are times, for all of my kids' lives, I've been a photographer, so they've always have had a camera pointed at them.
How old are your kids?
So my oldest is 9 and my youngest is 4.
So try that in 6 years.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. So my oldest hates having his picture. And I'll be fair, like the last the family photograph that we had on our Christmas cards was the first time. It was like all of us. You were kind of teasing me because I was wearing boots, and everybody else was barefoot. But that was the first time that all 3 of my kids looked and smiled at the camera in a family photo. And it was just like, and it literally, I had my next door neighbor take it with my camera, but it was just kind of like one of those things where I was like, Man, I framed that picture up like gigantic. I think we have like it's like a 16 by 24 in my house of a picture of us in our PJs, our Christmas PJs. And I just like, that was like the first moment that I was like, man, like I know I've been pointing this camera at these kids for 9 years.
Forever, right.
Yeah. Before they were even born, I was pointing a camera at them and they've just kind of revolted against it. But it's been a real blessing to kind of have that time to document them over 2020. And also it's been a blessing for them just to have dad home too, right? Like I think so much of what we do is spending, I mean, not always, but it's going from wedding to session. And, a lot of times, at least for me, and I'm sure for you too, Raquita, a lot of that time is at a sacrifice of certain things for our families.
Oh, always. Every choice requires some sort of sacrifice, one way or the other.
Yeah.
Anytime I was ironically talking to my therapist about that this week, that it's a challenge for me. She is challenging me to rethink my ideas about what balance is and what that looks like.
Yeah.
Because I have always been of the mindset that if I am succeeding at one thing, that it means that I am inevitably failing at the other. If I am killing it in my business, it means that I am failing usually as a mom. Like I'm not doing the thing. I'm not making the Christmas cookies or doing the whatever. If I've got a calendar full of Christmas sessions, it means that I don't have time to do our Christmas tree when I want to do it. I don't have time to do Christmas cookies when I want to do them. Like we're smashing all of that into 72 hours instead of over the month of December the way I want to. So it has been a real journey inward for me to really think about how I want to prioritize my time and what is acceptable to me versus what I've decided has been acceptable in the past.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear you say that. And I say that for a variety of reasons, because pretty much what you're saying is the exact same things that my wife says to me. It's a
mom thing. Like,
yeah,
it's the one thing that I envy about male photographers, that they don't have this automatic mom guilt that we have about pursuing our passions. I have friends who travel all over and do photo shoots all over the country, and they're taking weddings all over the world. And I'm like, I wish I had and it's not as though my husband wouldn't. I am the lucky one. If I told my husband I was taking a week to go shoot a wedding in Iceland, my husband would be like, bet, I'll see you when you get back. They'll be alive. There would be no hesitation. The hesitation is mine. I'm aware that the hesitation is mine, but I am a mom. And remember those expectations I talked about at the beginning? All of those expectations limit the way that I move about how I'm going to do the things. I wish that I could just be like, I'm out and I'll be back and y'all will be cool. And I'm going to do this amazing thing and trust that my children will see that and be like, my mom does amazing things.
Yeah.
In the same breath that they're like, my mom makes amazing cookies or my mom does this amazing thing. My husband, and it's hilarious because my husband, he cooks more often than me. Let's be super honest about my life. I am, again, super blessed. My husband cooks maybe 4 days out of the week, sometimes 5. And I cook the other 3 or 4, guaranteed. He does more than 50% of the cooking. He does 100% of the laundry. I am super blessed. But my children, in their minds, if you ask them who cooked all week last week, they would say me. Off tops.
Yeah.
It's just how our society has conditioned everything to revolve around mom. It doesn't matter who actually does it. In my children's memory, I am the person who cooks.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but your father cooked the last 4 days in a row. And they're like, oh, did he? I'm like, you watched him. You helped him chop the vegetables. You were in there with him.
Yeah.
And they're like, nope, they can't hear that.
So
It's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. Like, how do you, so I guess I can understand your point of view, obviously, because on living on the other side of that conversation, as someone who has traveled the world to photograph events, and I think there was long stretches of my career where I never really thought very much about that. I wasn't very in tune with maybe my wife's feelings. She was always supportive, and we always had the discussions. I didn't just say like, "Hey, I'm going to do this," and peace out. I'm in Mallorca, or I'm in Costa Rica or something like that. That we always had these discussions beforehand. But my question for you really would be, like, as a mom, and that is a hat and a lens that you see things. How are you managing all of that? Like what are you having discussions with your kids? What's going on as someone who creates for a living and does do some traveling? I mean, you do speak at conferences as well. I mean, I guess your kids are a little older as well than mine are. So like, how are you managing all that and figuring that out?
The fact that my children are older definitely plays a part in my willingness to embrace things like this. I don't know that I would have been able to wake up like this if my kids were 3, 6, and 9. Mm-hmm. Like, they are 10, 13, and 16. Like, if we moved this back to when they were 3, 6, and 9, I don't know that I would have the same want to do the things in the same way. Maybe if they were 3, 6, and 9 in 2021, I would probably, I would hope that I would be in a space where I was looking at motherhood through a different lens. And I'm looking at it way less Cosby Show like. Yeah. Like, because even if you watch the Cosby Show, Claire and Cliff were a doctor and a lawyer, but Cliff wasn't making dinner if it wasn't on a grill. Yeah. Like, Cliff wasn't the one who wasn't the one who showed up at their parent and teacher stuff. He wasn't even the one who did the vast majority of the discipline in that household. Yeah. Like, all of the shows about the kids getting in trouble were all about Claire putting her foot down, and it being a hilarious thing about how Cliff was kind of just hovering around that and left out of that space. Like, my favorite episode of that show is when Vanessa goes to Baltimore to see the Wretched. Mm-hmm. And one of the first jokes in that episode is how Claire comes in with Vanessa and closes the door as though Cliff isn't even there.
Yeah, I think that is a really, that's pretty on point. And I think that's, when we talk about being conditioned, kind of piggybacking off of what you were saying with your, like, hey, I still work. I work full time, and I have a studio that I go to and I work out of, and I have clients that I go, and although Dad is there making dinner 4 nights a week, he is not there. And I think a large part of that is we have slowly been conditioned, just as people and humans, that even from the content that we watch, that Dad is there, but he's not there.
Exactly. I feel like there is in this whole push to sort of deconstruct the idea of toxic masculinity. We are rethinking what it is to be masculine, but that also forces you to immediately rethink what it is to be feminine. Rethink what fatherhood looks like. Rethink what motherhood looks like. Mm-hmm. Rethink what womanhood is. Rethink what manhood is. Especially as we are kind of pushing ourselves on gender definitions and what it is to be human, and what all the tags and labels in humanity, what they mean, if they're necessary, like what they offer and what they take away. Mm.
Yeah, I think like when we go back and, we talk about like even the roles that which we play. I've shared this in a different interview, and I think I may have even shared it with you once upon a time, maybe a couple of years back. That is like, I knew once I started having children that one of the things that it was going to be an act of intention. And this is more built along the lines of, I guess, the feelings that I felt that people had of the misconceptions of what it meant to be a minority father. I wanted my kids to know exactly where we were on their birthday. So every year what I do is I write them a note. It's normally 2 to 3 pages. I stuff it full of about 10 to 20 photographs, and then I mail it to them. And I've just been keeping them. Each one of my kids, so my oldest has 9 letters, with pictures of him when he was 1 or leading up to 1. And stuff like that, because I really kind of wanted to change that definition of what it meant to be a father. Like, and also I thought it would be, maybe I could be completely incorrect, but it would be rad for my kids to know exactly what dad was thinking when he was.
It absolutely is. It humanizes you.
Yeah, at like 30, like, you know, I had this like super silly thought. It's not even silly. It kind of was like kind of dumbfounded me. Like, I am the age right now that my dad was at 39 years old. I was the age that my dad was when I left to go to college. And I don't know very much of my father from that point. Yeah. I mean, I know my dad was there. It kind of goes back to exactly what you were saying when we were talking about, hey, you know, my husband can make dinner 4 nights of the week, but, you know, all of my relationships are built upon what my mom did for me, you know, and I kind of wanted to change that narrative of the absentee dad or the, you know, whatever it was. So I was going to be intentional with my actions to write my kids letters on their birthdays, and I don't know what I'm going to do with them. At first I was like, oh, it'd be kind of cool to give them when they turn 18, but I don't think,
that's too early.
That's too early, right? Like, I was like, maybe
they won't appreciate it then.
Yeah, I was like, well, maybe I'll do it when they get married. So maybe this is an experience.
First kid, you give it to them when they have their first kid.
Dude, that is money. Yeah, okay. So see, this is the reason why I'm having these discussions, because I hadn't even thought about the first kid. My whole point was to go to the point to where either they graduate high school and go into college, but then they're probably going to lose them. You can stop
the letters then if you want to, like when they finish college or something. But when you hand them over, you hand it over to them under, like, as a mantle. I'm passing fatherhood on to you.
Yeah. That's it. That's the tea right there. That's exactly what I needed to do. Because I was even like having this discussion again with my, you know, all of my discussions are with my wife, because that's my germ bubble currently. And, and I was like, I don't know, because we were kind of just, you know, straightening up our house and kind of going through some things. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with these letters. I mean, obviously I'm going to give them to the kids, but I don't know when I'm going to give it to them. And the first kid is definitely when that time should be. But
I would buy nifty little wooden boxes or something, like, and put the letters in the box, and like whatever at the time when which you give it to them, you'll be able to decide what other things you want to give them as they become fathers. Because all your kids are boys, right?
Yeah, I have 3 boys. Yeah.
Right. So as they become fathers, the things that you want them to have. Like, if it were me, I would be putting a bottle of whiskey in there. You're going to need a kid. Like, you know, I would be putting like stuff like that. Like, you're going to need some lighter moments. You're going to need these things. And I want you to know how I felt about my journey as your father over the years. And these are the letters that I have written.
Yeah. And I think that's like, maybe also because I like to think about nostalgia and being like, man, I wonder what my dad thought. Now I can go back and have those discussions with my dad now, but my dad's now in his, you know,
the way he thinks about those things
are different.
Now is different than what he thought about them when he was 30.
Yeah.
Like, so this is like, literally, it is a completely different process to read your father's thoughts where he was at that moment, and be able to watch your father's progression as a human being.
Oh, 100%. And I think that kind of goes back to, as we I kind of got slightly off topic, but I think that is part of the reasons why prints and wedding albums are so important, right? It's like, because you will be able to go back and look at that point in time. And I think that's the thing, right? Like, I don't know if people are going to be like, well, let me pull. Maybe they will. Maybe I'm totally like not forward thinking enough. But people be like, oh, let me go pull out Granddad's USB 2.0 drive and look through his photographs. But
I'm just gonna say, in my family, my grandma is my grandma is what, 80? Maybe she might be 80 this year.
Yeah.
Shit, I gotta find out. She's pushing up on 80. Like, however old she is, she's got to be pushing up on 80. And her house is ground zero in our family. She has been prepping me to take her spot my whole life. Whenever she decides that she's done with her body and she moves on to whatever it is that is awaiting her in her next journey, I am aware that I will get the chest. There's a chest in my grandmother's living room that my children open every time we have a family gathering at my grandma's house. If we are there late, they automatically at some point will go to that chest, open it up, pull out pictures, and start asking, who is this? When was this? What's the story behind this outfit? Da 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 da. I have become mindful enough that they do this, that I have started taking images from their childhood to put into the chest, so that it involves them more. It's not just all these things that happened before them, that they see that they have a place in this story, and all these stories we tell, that they will now pick up pictures of them when they were little kids, or them in bad hair outfit days or whatever, and be able to tell the stories to the family members who were not there and not involved. And I'm asking for those images for my adult cousins who have children who are my kids' age, and being like, bring a handful of pictures to grandma's house and drop them in the chest. So we have those memories, those moments to kind of embrace. And it's a whole, I feel like it's a whole practice in grounding them in who they are and who they belong to.
That is probably something that we all need to do, is to have a chest of printed images and photo albums and stuff that people can kind of flip through, versus, I think you said it earlier, like with digital cameras today, is like all they are is just data until they're printed.
Absolutely.
And I think that is such an excellent point. And I think that, I've shared this before, that, like so many people forget about, the second half of photography, which is the print. The actual act of taking the photo is relatively the easy part. You're only really looking at 3 or 4 adjustments in order to get an accurate exposure.
That's true.
It's the printed part. I mean, they can exist without each other, but why should they?
The funny thing is, it used to be seriously the easy part. Like, I remember printing prints. Like, I remember Stop Bath and Fixer, and like coming out and like what that smelled like, and how many different ways you had to like you only got one shot to develop that roll of negative right, and then you had as much paper as you could afford to burn through to print it, but you still had to like figure that out. Like, people are always amusing me when they say that that photoshopping is a newfangled thing. I'm like, y'all clearly never spent an afternoon trying to dodge and burn something in the dark room. like
no time. They should go look at some old contact sheets of people, like of some of our favorite photographers, and look at how much work they put in to get to their final image. Absolutely.
And so I want people, I want my children, I want the people I'm related to, I want my clients and their families to really embrace the idea of what I'm offering to them. Like, I know that what we do is in brain surgery. I'm real clear on, like, in the course of a pandemic, we are completely non-essential. I get that. But when it comes down to a pandemic and we're talking about the people who you will never see again, there are 400,000 families who value what we did before a pandemic.
Yeah. There's a lot of truth.
That's a lot of families who are grasping on to what we did.
Yeah. No, you're 100% correct. 100% correct on that. So we've been chatting for well over an hour, but I do want to ask you this. This is just kind of how our conversations go to begin with. So I'm not surprised at that at all. But I always like to ask everyone when I do these rooms this one final question.
Sure.
So how do you want to be remembered when the lights are out and you are no longer breathing air on this earth? How do you want to be remembered?
Oh, that's a good one. I want to be remembered as somebody who fought the good fight in every aspect of her life. Like that she fought for the underdog and she fought for you if you needed her. Like I want to be remembered as a whole person, outside of like I want my clients to be able to say that she saw me as a whole person and she required that I see her beyond her camera. Like as a matter of connection. I want to be remembered as somebody who was connected to other people. I want when I die that there is a space for a moment. That people notice that I am gone for just a moment. I'm not under the impression that my life is so important that there would be this giant gap when I leave the world. But I want there to be a stop for just a moment where people say the world will miss this as we find a way to replace it.
And that is a word. Oh man, Raquita, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come here and chat. Anytime
at all, Tim.
And man, I say this after every one, man. I feel like if no one else got anything, I got something out of it, and that's and that to me is a blessing. And I listen, I just love you as a friend. I'm so thankful that we have had the benefit to take our online friendship into real life friendship.
Me too, very much so.
And I am much better off and a much better person because of it.
Same.
So yeah, guys, I leave these up for questions at the end, but I think we're just going to end it. We're going to end on that last note because I thought it was just too good to kind of sully it with something else. It was good, but guys, I want to say thank you for hanging with us and listening to the two of us kind of just chat and talk about things, and I hope you learned something or maybe something kind of changed your perspective on life and how you create and what you create, and realize that you are more than just a photographer. You are a person who has goals and that hurts and will have wants and will one day wonder how you want to be remembered. I just want to say thank you for listening. I'm going to go ahead and end this room, guys, and we'll talk to you guys next time. I'll have a couple extra rooms coming out next week. We're supposed to get 8 inches of snow tomorrow, so we'll see how that goes.
We're supposed to get 3 to 6, so
yeah, it's absolutely wild. Whoever thought that Texas was going to be afraid of snowflakes? Anyway, different story.
Listen, y'all ain't ready for all this snow. I feel so bad for Texas.
I do too. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and end the room. Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate you taking the time to listen with us this entire time, and I'll see you guys in the next room. Bye, Raquita.
Bye, babe. Thanks.
Thank you.